Okay, we are making our squash and onions. This was one of my favorite dishes as a kid, and it's going to be just it's simple ingredients, and it's amazing how delicious this is. So I'm going to start with an onion. I'm just cutting off the top and the root of the onion. Now, this is a Vidalia onion. I live really close to, we say Vidalia here, so wherever you are in the world, we call it Vidalia. It's right down the road. I'm not far from where I live. And these onions are only available a certain time of year. They're sweeter, so they probably are a little more likely to spike your blood sugar. They do have higher sugar content than some of the other onions, but it's just what we've always had here in the South this time of year. And so I love having the Vidalias. And I already cut my onion the wrong way, but that's okay. We're going to keep going. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice my onion into just little slices. And if you don't have Vidalias, you can use any onion. It's what we use traditionally here in the South with our squash. Now, for a healthier version of onion, then you want to go with red onion. A red onion that has those anthocyanins that are so good for your health. And so I also want some garlic. So before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and squash these garlic. And so I always use the dull side of the knife. Make sure my hand is on that, and I smash it. And then that lets me peel off those little peppers. I started to say peppers. So I can pull off the little peppers. I'm going to throw that in my compost. Which I save the onion tops and bottoms for my freezer bag to make a vegetable broth. I wish I had a vegetable broth for our recipe today, but I do not. I'm just going to use water. So super simple and easy. And I'm going to let this garlic sit here so that the allicin enzymes in there form, which are very, they're wonderful for the health. That's where our medicinal qualities are in the allicin enzyme. So the onions are starting to sting my eyes. I forgot my garlic smasher, so let me grab it really quick. I'm going to use that instead of mincing, which I can't believe that I'm not mincing. I always thought I love mincing garlic, but now that I found that little tool, I love that too. So I'm just going to slice our onion and slice our squash, putting it on this little dish here. So just a little casserole dish. You could use like one of these round. I think I'd call it cornell. Is that what it's called? Anyway, it doesn't matter. So you could have a straight neck or a crooked neck squash. You could also use a zucchini. I just like a summer squash with this dish. So I'm cutting off the top and the bottom. And then it's up to you. If you want rounds, you can just thinly slice some rounds. I generally like the half moons. So I'm going to cut it in half lengthwise and lay it down. And I put the short end on the long end together. So you can see kind of like a yan and yin symbol. And I'm just going to thinly slice the squash. And so for me, the thinner the better, but it really depends on you and your taste. So squash, we don't give it a lot of credit for its nutritional content, but it actually has some lutein and xanthan, which are wonderful for our vision. It's very hydrating as well. And it's actually a fruit. See the seeds on the inside? This is actually a fruit. We call them fruit vegetables. Most people call it a vegetable, but it's actually a fruit. And so it's very hydrating. And so in the summertime, you'll find most of our vegetables, and I use that very loosely, are actually fruits. They're very hydrating and wonderful for the body. Low glycemic as well. So I'm going to slice that as thin as I can. And then I'm going to combine it with that onion. And I may have to upgrade. That was kind of a large squash. But it'll all shrink down in my little pan. I'm going to need to get another bowl to combine it all. For now, we'll just pile it up right here. So when you do cooking demos, if you mess up, you have to start all the way over. So we're just sticking with it, right? So now I'm going to mince these garlic here. And so I like this little handy dandy tool that I bought on Amazon. But if you do not like Amazon, I'm sure you can find it somewhere else. The name on this one is Zulay, Z-U-L-A-Y. So you probably buy direct from them. So I just smash it and kind of roll a little bit and maybe slide it a little. You can see the garlic comes up into the center. It's so much easier than mincing, even though after going through culinary arts school, I actually like to mince and chop, but this is even easier. So we'll go with it, right? I love tools. I'm all about the next gadget. All right. And so I wanted to add that to my onions and my squash. And then I just need to add some herbs and some salt. So let me get a bowl that we can mix it in, and then we can bake it in. It'll be okay if it's towering like this. That's going to be perfectly good. So let me get a bowl we can mix it in, because I do want it to be mixed well, even if it's piled high like that. Now, squash is full of water, so I don't need to add any oil or anything to this. I do want to add a half a teaspoon of salt. That's going to help bring out some of the natural liquids that are in the squash. And so let me get a measuring spoon. I'm going to put in just a half a teaspoon of salt to help pull out the liquids there. And then I'm going to add a teaspoon of thyme. And when we pull this out of the oven, I'm going to top it with some flavors as well. So growing up, I did eat a lot of dairy. I ate cheese. I ate all of the things that I don't eat now. Someone with autoimmune disease, there are certain foods that we do need to avoid. And unfortunately, it's not the same for everyone. We can't just follow a protocol. And so we grab a good spoon to stir these. So I'm going to just stir it. So that, did I say that I put a teaspoon of thyme? So a teaspoon of thyme, 2 garlic cloves, and half a teaspoon of salt. That's all that's on here. Stir it up. And then we're going to put it in our little casserole dish. If you have one that's a little bit bigger, that would be even better. I used to have one. I don't know what happened to it. That would have been the perfect size. It's perfect for appetizer night. Anyway, I'm going to put it in my little dish here. Pile it all up high. It already smells so good. And like I said, that squash is going to release some liquid. So it will be nice and moist. But just to make sure, I'm going to add a little bit of water. If you have some broth, you could add a little bit of vegetable broth to it as well. So let's get all of that delicious garlic and thyme that's still in our bowl. We don't want to lose any of that. Put that to the side. I'm going to add just about a quarter of a cup of water. And then I need to cover it. And so because this dish doesn't have a lid, I'm going to lay a piece of parchment on top and then put aluminum foil on top of that. I don't want the aluminum to touch my food for many reasons. One, in my culinary healing circle in my membership, we're reading the book, The Toxin Solution. And two, as someone who was diagnosed with Graves several years ago, Graves' disease is usually associated with a heavy metal component. Most people with Graves' disease do have some heavy metal issues. And so I don't want to add anything that has any metals like this in there. Okay, so it's on top of it, but it's not touching my food. The parchment paper is protecting it. Here is my squash and onions. I'm going to put it in the oven at 375 for 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up and see if it needs to go any further. So my oven is already preheated. I'm going to go and stick it in there. Set my timer. And there we go. So we need to wait 30 minutes, and then we can take that out. Okay, here is our squash. It's been 30 minutes, our squash and onions. Let's see how they look. They are nice and tender, but I feel like they could cook a little bit longer. I like the squash to be a little more translucent. So if I hold that one up, if you can see, it's not really clear yet. And so don't do that. I have people tell me I have Teflon fingers. Don't do what I do. Don't pick up the food. But I think it needs a few more minutes. So let's do about 15 more minutes. As a matter of fact, I'm going to leave it uncovered. We did 30 minutes covered. Let's do 15 minutes uncovered. And then I'm going to show you how we're going to top it to give it a delicious flair. I'm putting it back in the oven for 15 minutes. Okay, growing up, we would always put cheese on top of our squash. And so I'm not going to do that today. So I'm going to show you what I am going to put on top to give it extra flavor, make it just an extra punch. It's delicious the way it is, but I want to add some other nutrients as well. And so I'm going to start with some hemp seeds. So hemp seeds, see if I can show you. I buy them in bulk. I'm going to use 2 tablespoons of hemp seeds. So here they are. They're really tiny seeds, but they contain all of the essential amino acids that we need. And so that's protein. And so all the essential amino acids that we need are in these tiny little seeds. And they're also the perfect balance of omega-3s to 6, which means that they are very anti-inflammatory. So they are a fabulous food for anyone with any chronic illness, but especially with autoimmune disease. If you're working on reversing, then you want to be using things like hemp seeds in your dishes. The other thing I'm going to be adding is some nutritional yeast. And so I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of that, and that gives it a cheesy flavor. People get worried when it says yeast, but it is inactive. It's not an active yeast. It has a very umami flavor, so it's a lot like a Parmesan cheese. You can always leave it out. You don't have to include it. Then I want to add just a half a teaspoon of salt. You know, Parmesan is very salty. Another thing that you could leave out. And then I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of garlic powder just because I love garlic. And so we're going to be adding some garlic flavor. So I'm just going to stir this up. And when our squash and onions are ready, I'm going to sprinkle this right on top. I'm not going to put it in the oven because those omega-3s that are in those hemp seeds, they're very fragile. And so if we heated it up, that's going to transform the oils in there, just like if we were heating up oils. And so I don't want that. I want the anti-inflammatory qualities. So I'm just going to sprinkle it right on top. And then this is going to give me a nice crunchy, cheesy flavor on top of that squash and onions. Okay, here's our squash and onions right out of the oven. I'm going to top them with our cheesy seeds. I was going to say sauce, but it's not a sauce. I'm just going to sprinkle that right on top. Oh, it smells so good. Now, doesn't that, so you can see I have some left over. I can sprinkle it on top when I serve it, right? And so doesn't that look delicious? Here's our squash and onions, perfect for the summertime. It has that cheesy flavor, the wonderful yellow squash and onions. I can't wait to dig in. I hope that you enjoy. Share this with your friends. Hit the like button and subscribe to my channel and comment. I love to hear from you.